All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm Matt Monty. I'm joined by Devin O'Donnell here on the Nerd Rage Gaming Championship Series. We are in the semifinals here, so I'll get that updated on there on the bottom for you in just a second. Semifinals, we're going to take you through our top four bracket here, and you'll be excited to know there are four unique archetypes in our semifinals, which I'm super happy about. We've got Scott Pulera, who we watched earlier today, play Izzet Phoenix against Carly Peterson. We just watched her win her quarterfinals match with that really impressive showing by Mono Blue Spirits. Then on the other side of the bracket, we have Kyle Gonzalez, who's playing Mono Green Devotion against Jeffrey Carr, who's playing Rakdos Combo, which we watched that matchup earlier today. So we're going to start with Izzet Phoenix versus Mono Blue Spirits. But we do have a backup match if we have to get there. So I'm pretty excited. I mean, let's start here. Top four playoff. Devin, who you got winning the whole thing?
So, if we want to go over both matchups really briefly here, I think Phoenix is probably slightly ahead of Spirits. The thing about the Phoenix deck is it has a lot of cheap removal spells, so I think it can kind of, kind of interact with Carly's soft counter magic pretty well. So I like Phoenix in that matchup. With Devotion versus the Rakdos Sacrifice deck, really think I like Devotion. It all depends on whether or not Kyle can find Karn the Great Creator. That's the one card in the matchup. And then if we talk about Phoenix versus Devotion, personally, I like the Devotion side of things. I might be a little biased, but I got Devotion taking the whole thing. No biases, I promise.
All right. Well, I'm going to say I feel mostly the same way about these two semifinal matchups. But from what I've seen from this Izzet Phoenix deck, it's doing pretty powerful things. And I think if Scott can get past this matchup, I think he's going to do okay against either one of the two decks on the other side. So I'm going to take Izzet Phoenix to win as a surprise to no one who knows me and knows what I like to play either. So that's our top four here. All right. So Scott drawing up his 7-card opening hand here. Don't look like there's any lands. Last two were lands. That's good.
Better late than never, right?
That's right.
One thing we didn't touch on is the play draw. So Carly's going to be on the play here. Very, very important for the Mono Blue Spirits deck. I mean, you could say that about basically any deck, but specifically when the Spirits deck is trying to set up a early creature, kind of back it up with the cheap counter magic, and really, really important to kind of get the ball rolling here as we see a Wanderer on turn 2. Now, it's kind of interesting to see whether or not maybe Carly had that on turn 1 and chose not to play it and hold up Spell Pierce, wanted to protect the Wanderer. So, interested to see how this plays out.
I forgot about how good this card's about to be. This Ledger Shredder against
Oh my
Mono Blue Spirits.
goodness.
That one's going to be quite good, I think.
Yeah, that specifically, Carly as a Mono Blue deck does not have any removal spells. And Carly's deck is really, really benefiting from casting multiple spells in the same turn. So you can imagine the combination of having no removal plus wanting to double spell is going to be really rough. Also, it's just a good blocker. It blocks basically everything in Carly's deck. So this is going to be rough for Carly.
Yeah, just the 1/3. That's pretty good. So the only thing she really has access to, and this is in air quotes, you can't see them removal wise, is the petty theft mode on Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, which is not bad, especially if you let the Shredder get in play for a couple of turns, maybe, get a couple of counters, conniving to make it big, and then you can bounce the big Shredder and maybe punch through some damage that way. The one, I think the really important part about Carly's game plan here is the Lords. We're talking about Supreme Phantom specifically. That's kind of the best way for Carly to outsize as we see a second Shredder here. That's a beating.
Yeah, brutal. And this is going to connive here with this opt. And I got to tell you, partner, this is really rough for Mono Blue Spirits just off on the third turn of the game.
Yeah, this is definitely a bad spot for Carly, not having access to removal. And I mean, you see Scott's hand just basically, a abundance of riches here. We're considering discarding a Lightning Axe. That's how good our hand is.
Imagine that. Imagine the terror on your face if that happens. Oh no.
I see 3 red cards. That cannot be good for Carly.
Yeah. So when this happens, you have to think to yourself, "Oh wow, that's really great for me."
Yeah, they discard a Lightning Axe. Perfect.
Yeah,
that just means their hand is rolled up, and a Cruise discarded as well. Not even going to attack, just playing defense. I kind of like it,
I love it.
Yeah.
Here comes that petty theft we spoke about. And
Okay.
but again,
Now, this isn't terrible because Carly can counter it on the way back down, so that might let us answer one of the shredders. But the second one is really what's gonna do Carly in.
it just feels so bad. Here comes a Wanderer, and that pumps up the original Wanderer. So can almost get through this ledger shredder.
We're getting there, one spirit at a time.
Yeah,
You see something like, even if Carly has the Lord, the Supreme Phantom, if we connive and discard a spell, that gets us to a 3/5 versus a 4/4 Mausoleum Wanderer, so we can't even attack past the 3/5 at that point.
yeah, super difficult. I am glad you pointed out Scott sitting back on defense. I think that's very important because Scott's deck is probably going to go longer a lot better than Carly's deck, and especially with things like the time warp style spells and things like that. Like Carly's gonna have a lot to deal with.
Right, yeah, and as we talked about, Brazen Borrower is kind of an answer to Shredder, but we see the issue here is now we just replay it, get more spells, more connive triggers,
Right.
and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse for Carly here.
Oh yeah. And this card, this Ledger Shredder has been phenomenal. There's a Strangle,
Yeah,
I
and
believe,
you
in
see
there.
Scott's leftovers are just removal spell, removal spell, removal spell, and treasure cruise. So that's pretty good leftovers here.
Yeah, yeah. Imagine your opponent has discarded 2 removal spells and just staring at you from across the table with these giant Ledger Shredders. That feels terrible.
Yeah, we're resolving the consider. Gonna bin a land here. And remember, Carly does have the Mausoleum Wanderer, so Scott's not going to want to play that treasure cruise just yet. Want to wait until we have access to mana to pay for the Wanderers. Even a situation where, let's say, Carly has a flash creature like a Rattlechains, you want to get into a position where you have, even if you can't pay for both Rattlechains, you want to force Carly to sacrifice both, right?
Yep.
So you want to maybe try and play the treasure cruise when you have 3 mana available. So you're basically trading the cruise for both Wanderers, which is still a good trade for Scott.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time for Scott to send this Fire Impulse out.
Yeah, looks like Scott's probably okay. We're gonna go after the Wanderer. Same thing, I guess.
Yeah, and if you know what, and the thing is, if it eats a Spell Pierce, now this should connive again. Yeah, this is
Yeah, that should connive. Yeah. Oh, God,
man, that's good.
this is gross.
Yeah, that's disgusting. So and like you and I said, like Carly's doing things, but these Ledger Shredders just going to sit back and they're really unassailable at this point.
Yeah, it's. I mean, essentially just a mode at this point. Carly
Yep.
literally can't attack the rest of the game, and Scott's just gonna sit here and eventually find ways to overpower, like you said, the Time Walks and the Arclight Phoenixes. Scott really doesn't have to do much. He doesn't. He's just gonna sit back on these for most of the game until the point where Carly has nothing left in play, and then we can turn the corner that way. There's no reason to get aggressive.
Yeah. Well, here comes a Treasure Cruise. It looks like as Scott picks up his graveyard and starts delving away some things. There's 7
And this is
cards.
that spot that we talked about last turn, where even if Carly has a flash creature, the Wanderers become 2/2s. You then still have to sacrifice both Wanderers to counter the cruise, which is still a fine exchange for Scott.
Oh, that's so nasty. There's Arclight Phoenix.
Yeah, now we could see maybe a strategic planning, connive away the Phoenix that we just drew, and maybe another removal spell to get back the Phoenix. It's an absolute nightmare for Carly.
Yeah, and like again, like you mentioned, even if this gets like Spell Pierced or whatever happens here, Scott doesn't even care. These Ledger Shredders are massive.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's countered. That's fine. I'll
Still
connive.
resolve the connive, yeah. And
And there
Scott
goes
did pick up a
Phoenix.
Phoenix. That's instantly going to the graveyard.
Another Treasure Cruise. Is that one good? Not
Oh,
sure.
God.
Oh, mercy. All right.
Maybe a bit of a small thing. It's likely not going to matter, but I think I'd prefer the extra counter on the smaller shredder. Rather spread out my counters a little bit. It's likely not going to matter, and it's probably one of those like 2% things. But
Sure.
just I think I'd rather have the counter on the smaller shredder.
All right. I think it's time to just like attack here for 1,000,000.
The Phoenix is probably a free attack at least.
All right.
Okay. That is also a reasonable attack. I was going
Fine
to say,
too.
even if we trade for the Phoenix, we can get it back next turn. But this is also good too because the Phoenix is still a good blocker in the same way that it is a good attacker because you don't really care if it gets trades off.
Sure. Hey, why not? Why not?
Why not?
Draw them up, Scott. This is your time. You're in the feature match area, so you draw them up.
How many ancestral recalls do you resolve before your opponent's had enough?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Let's connive again. Why not?
Yeah, because the
Oh my god.
this is brutal. I
This is a lot. This is a lot.
yeah, yeah, that's a lot. That's for sure. And Carly scoops them up.
All right, Carly's had enough. Not surprised.
Had enough of the ledger shredders. I can't say that I blame her. That was yeah. Obviously, ledger shredder going to be pretty important in these games, and I was thinking about like the Phoenix deck in itself, and I was like, oh well, the Phoenixes can block forever. They come back a lot. There's all these impulses and stuff. Didn't even register that ledger shredder is just going to be a moat for the entire game. So yeah, that was. I assume that this matchup just looks like that. We'll take a peek at the sideboards and all that stuff, the deck list to get you seeing what's going on. So let's see what Carly can do. So obviously these mystical disputes are quite good here. Is this really something you want to like entrancing melody to take stuff? I mean, I don't know.
That's where I was going to go towards. I think you kind of have to. I mean, the nice thing is you get Fort Mystical Disputes, which is very good. That is a 1 minute answer, similar, to like the thing about Mystical Dispute versus stuff like Spell Pierce, Geistlight Snare is it's not as conditional because the card that you care the most about by far is Ledger Shredder. So Dispute's a slam dunk there, and I think you do want access to these melodies. You could even see, depending on how many counterspells Scott has access to, maybe play a bit of a longer game. Let Scott continuously connive and connive and connive, and then you maybe turn 5 or turn 6 play melody for 2, back it up with a counterspell, and that could just be pretty backbreaking on for Carly.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I'm trying to think of like what you want to cut if you're in her seat. Is there like some of the soft counters you think are probably the best things to cut out?
I think this is, we talked about this last time. I think this is probably another matchup where Rattlechains isn't, or excuse me, Shacklegeist isn't quite as good.
Yeah.
The tap ability is not going to come up that often. Like tapping a Phoenix doesn't feel that great. Potentially, well, now that I think about it, that might be Carly's main deck, quote unquote, answer to a big Ledger Shredder is just tapping it. That can
Sure.
potentially punch through some damage.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. I just feel like these soft counters got to go for the disputes and the melodies. That's like 6 cards. It's not bad. You get rid of like the 6 soft counters that you have, and hopefully that's good enough. So at any rate, we'll see. And like unlicensed hearse is like good here, but is it good enough? That's my other question.
It's decent. It's really, really depending on whether or not you have it early. The Phoenix deck is, as we've seen, the Phoenix deck is really good at putting a lot of cards into the graveyard
Yeah.
because things like Pieces of the Puzzle, which puts a lot of cards, you have multiple cantrips and turns where you're like cantrip plus shredder trigger connive, so you can really continuously refuel the graveyard at a rate that is faster than what Unlicensed Hearst is offering. It's 2 cards versus maybe I put 4 or 5 cards in my graveyard at the same time. It is targeted, which means it gets the Phoenixes out of there, but it's not going to stop something like a Treasure Cruise, like a Leyline of the Void or a Rest in Peace normally would.
Sure. All right, let's check out Scott's deck while we're in here too, and see if that gets better. There's like these crackling drakes. There's an abrade. There's just there's so much stuff. There's mystical disputes too. There's a lot of stuff even coming in, making Scott's deck even better here. I think in the matchup.
Right. So from the Phoenix side of things, it's interesting because typically, at least from my experience, I think what Scott wants to do is he would normally expect the player to have a lot of graveyard hate, which means he would trim on stuff like maybe trim Trespass, trim Iteration, trim Cruise, trim Phoenix, maybe not trim Phoenix, but things like that where you're making your deck a little less reliant on the graveyard and bringing in Crackling Drake and cards that don't care about the graveyard hate. The thing is, Carly doesn't have a ton of graveyard hate, and the graveyard hate that she has access to is the stuff like hers. It's not the slam dunk, Leyline Rest in Peace type of stuff. So I'm not even sure that Scott necessarily has to go that route. That being said, I still like Crackling Drake. It's really hard for, again, Carly has really no removal spells outside of the air quotes Brazen Borrower and Shacklegeist. So Drake is a really good body and, some counter spells, some removal spells to shore up that as well.
Yeah, I think what I would probably cut these like Galvanic Iterations, two of those, like the two Temporal Trespass, and just like just overload on removal spells and things like that. And because you don't need Trespass, you don't need to take another turn to steal a game. Like you're just gonna sit there for a while and kind of bleed Carly out. It feels like.
Yeah, the trespass iteration stuff is more for where you need to race. You need to end the game as quickly as possible. But basically, those you let you fill up your graveyard, take a couple of turns, finish the game with Phoenix. That's not what this matchup is about. As you saw, Scott in game one didn't even attack with the Ledger Shredders for quite a few turns. So Scott can afford to just kind of play a Shredder, sit back on it with all of his removal and counter spells, and then take the game at his own pace. Right?
Yeah,
He's not trying to end the game as quickly as possible.
yeah, I'm definitely with you. I think you and I have the kind of same game plan, and we'll see what Scott does. Scott looks like he's going to be able to keep 7. Carly going to take a mulligan down to 6 as well, which is also really rough for Carly because you know you need a ton of creatures because Scott's going to have a bunch of removal post board. Looks like
I was
actually
gonna
on
say, I
5.
thought it was 5. Yeah, I thought it was 5.
Rough.
Yeah, that's a rough spot to be in, and already a bad matchup, and no one drop either. Again, Carly may be holding the one drop here. Yeah, it looks like she is. Okay, so we saw this last game as well. She just chose not to deploy the one drop on turn one, wanting to hold up the ability to protect it, which I like a lot.
Okay. There is it's like a bunch of removal spells, a treasure cruise, and a crackling drake. That is great hand there for Scott.
It's definitely a hand. Yeah, going back, the other thing that I wanted to mention about the reason she's protecting this one drop so much is because her removal spells are soft counters like Spell Pierce, and also contingent on having a flying creature like Geistlight Snare and Lofty Denial.
Wow. All right. So Scott's going to fight over that, and Carly has. Okay, so this is important. I mentioned that Faceless Haven, and that is at least a creature that can. And the thing is, that Scott has this axe, which is a little annoying for Carly, but at least the Haven acts like another creature.
Yeah, Haven does give the Carly the ability to have some kind of pressure here, even in the face of all these removal spells. But as you mentioned, with the axe in hand, Scott's not too concerned with that.
All right, another land here for Scott. Carly has a Spectral Sailor.
Okay, not too bad. Got to untap with it, potentially undo one of the mulligans here. Yeah, Carly's just going to sit on the sailor. Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I'm actually a little bit surprised to see Scott didn't fire off the fiery. Does he have a fiery impulse? I thought he
It's.
did.
I think he used that one. There's just a lightning axe is the one removal spell hand.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. You don't want to use the axe on a sailor. I think it makes sense. If it was an impulse, I wanted to maybe see Scott use that before Carly gets to untap and get an extra card. Just make sure that Carly can't dig her way out of this mold of 5.
I like this. Scott's just kind of saying, all right, if you're going to tap your 4 mana to draw a card, I'll just wait until then. And yeah, Carly's in rough shape here.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, Scott doesn't really care that much if all Carly is doing is spending her entire turn to draw one card. Scott can very easily keep up with that with all of his, cantrips and stuff like Treasure Cruise can just easily outpace the cards that Sailor can provide.
Sure. I think I'm into like I don't know. I think I'm into Axe and then Cruise here.
Yeah, he's thinking about going on a cruise.
That's quite good. Carly says, "Yeah, sure, draw them out." Oh gosh,
The Drake and the Shredder, huh?
that's just that is
Yeah,
that is
you know,
misery.
we don't like to write games off this early, but this is going to be a quite the uphill battle for Carly.
And he goes ahead and gonna go ahead and Axe now. I think that's a good use of the turn. Just cutting off Carly's resources.
Yeah, especially doing that while Carly's tapped out to, after she already fired up the Spectral Sailor. So that very good timing. Doesn't want Carly to be able to have something like a Spell Pierce to be able to counter the Lightning Axe.
Now, what I will say is Carly picked up that entrancing melody that you and I talked about in the sideboard segment. So maybe she gets a little lucky with this. We'll have to see.
Well, the problem is, so Crackling Drake is extremely good from the Izzet Phoenix side of things. Carly doesn't have that many spells, so if
Yeah,
we steal a Crackling Drake, it's gonna be what, a
It's a 1 right now, I think.
It's
Yeah.
only a 1 right now. Well, the melody would make it a 2,
That
but
melody, yeah.
yeah.
All right. That's I mean the Haven is a plan also.
Yeah, that's true. We do have Scott to 11. Now we're going to 7. Okay, 2-turn clock from the Haven. Something, right?
Yeah, I mean, hey, you gotta gotta have a plan. Every great comeback starts by being behind by a lot. So, this is where we're at here.
We're gonna go Shredder Drake. Oof.
Yeah, and it's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be absolutely brutal.
Okay, no Drake, so no fourth land from Scott.
Yeah. That's a connive.
We get to connive. Well, okay, interesting enough. Scott discarded a land there. It's actually really important. So Scott has a Fiery Impulse and a Braid. If he had discarded a spell to make the Shredder a 2/4, and Carly went Melody or Shredder, Scott would not have been able to cast one removal spell on the Shredder.
Right. Yeah. Big deal. What do we got here? There's the hearse, which
Okay.
a little late to the party there.
Not too bad. I don't think there was a Phoenix in Scott's graveyard.
No, I did not see one yet. Okay.
But the hearse is something where, a couple of turns of activations can really get it out of Scott's damage base removal. Now, the one thing I will say is I noticed that Scott did have a Braid in his hands, so that might be, a bit of a risky proposition.
Man, just continue to rip removal here. This looks like a time for a Braid, yeah.
Yep.
Ship it. One's down.
Probably going to go strategic planning, do a little conniving here, trying to find an Arclight Phoenix. Oh, well, yeah, I'll just take an Ancestral. Sure.
Five spells, no big deal. All right.
And we'll resolve planning. Oh, maybe. Okay.
Yep.
We're resolving planning. Kind of into just taking lands here. Yeah.
Sure.
This lets you cruise and hold up a removal spell if you need to.
Man, this is just nuts.
This is a lot to handle.
And this one gonna meet. So Brazen Borrower gonna enter.
Yeah, doing that in response to the cruise, just in case Scott finds a mystical dispute off of the cruise. So I like the timing there.
Sure, gotta do something.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned this earlier. We had talked about this matchup. We thought that the mono blue deck was a little bit behind. This was I hadn't even realized how incredible Ledger Shredder was in this matchup.
Oh.
This was just removal spells, Phoenix, and cruises. I was like, okay, well, this is probably a close matchup. Shredder makes that a lot worse for Carly.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot worse. This what we got here?
Okay, we got a Melody.
Sure. Try and get in for 3.
I think Scott picked up a Dispute. Funnily enough, Scott discarded the Lightning Axe and also put a counter on the Shredder. His only removal spell left over is that Impulse. Now, I will say, and Carly knows about this, Scott still does have access to the Crackling Drake.
Yeah.
So that can kind of brick wall the Shredder for the time being.
The thing is there's these Faceless Havens. I'm never going to get that name right. These Faceless Havens just hanging out on Carly's side, which I mentioned earlier was like a big deal too. Never mind. Scott's just gonna
Shredder Drake. Okay. Got a counter on the Shredder. Could be worse. So now
that thing has
definitely
to be giant by now.
The Drake, yeah. We probably can't count that high.
Gotta be huge.
Carly is definitely looking for that second copy of Entrancing Melody, though.
Yes, most definitely.
Steal that Drake.
All right.
See if she can find it. Didn't quite get a good look at it. Looks like we may or may not have a 20-sided die for that Crackling Drake, so you can get a better idea of how big it is. Probably an easy trade. Yeah, easy trade for Scott here, I think.
Yeah, you got to get these lands off the table. It's the most It's funny, but it's the most menacing thing on the table right now for Carly. I think you have to take this trade.
Yeah, and you got your card out of the Drake already. I believe Scott had a second Drake as well,
Yeah.
so this trade, you don't even really care about this thing dying. The only consideration is if, for whatever reason, if the Drake is lethal, then maybe you consider taking a hit, kill the Shredder, and just try to kill Carly in one attack, but...
Sure. Scott has this Hall of the Storm Giant, too. Yeah, tons of power on the board.
Yeah, definitely could, at some point fire up the Hall. I'm more into, at least this turn, it looks like we have some cantrips, a pieces, a land, and that second Drake. So probably going to go, I think I would lead Drake, see what you draw, and then potentially maybe pieces, but we'll see how Scott wants to play this.
Yeah, there's the world's really Scott's oyster at this point. There's tons of decisions to be made.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where, oh god,
volley. Come on, man.
how about 2 more removal spells and Mill the Phoenix?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's one of those spots where, Scott's going to have to maybe take a little bit longer to think about his plays. But when you're in a spot like this, when you're this far ahead, you have to really think about how you actually lose the game. What does you losing the game look like? So, the answer to that question is probably nothing at this point, but still want to make sure we cover all the angles for Scott.
Strangle. Everybody's conniving. Oh, is that a Rattlechains? Yes.
Unfortunately, Letter Shredder. Okay, found a lofty denial. Not too
Okay.
bad.
Well, Scott gets the connive here still, right? Maybe not.
Yeah, I think Scott's connive trigger was on the stack.
Yeah, it could be.
Maybe he just hasn't resolved the trigger yet.
Okay.
Or potentially missed it. Oh no, here it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
right now.
There it
Yeah.
is.
He's still got Rending Volley and a Fire Impulse at this point if he really wants to rumble. Which, yeah, makes sense to me. Sure. Spend 4 cards to get my card off the table.
Yeah, and he gets the Phoenix back. I was gonna say for a second, there's potentially a situation where Carly draws Brazen Borrower, can maybe go like fire up the Haven, attack because it has Vigilance before blocks, tap the Haven, bounce the Shredder. But I believe Scott does have that Phoenix in the graveyard to trigger. I think what's okay. Probably seeing if we played a land yet. I don't believe Scott has played a land yet.
I do not think so either. Is he going to miss the Arclight?
I think. We'll have to see.
Is
I
Phoenix
don't
a
think it's a
May?
May. No, it's not a May.
I might want to double check that. So we'll get them to pause it real quick. I want to double check.
Yeah, somebody put it in the chat. It doesn't say May. It just says Return Arclight Phoenix.
Okay. So that's actually pretty big because this is a free block with the.
Oh yeah, with the Phoenix, just an easy block.
Yeah.
And Carly likely would not make that attack if there was a Phoenix in play.
All right.
Have to see what happens here. I mean, not too much has changed in the board state. It's really tough with these situations. I don't exactly know
Yeah.
what the criteria is for rewinding and things like that. I think most of it is if not too much has happened. Of course, across the past couple of turns, we took a draw step for Carly, an activation of a manly creature related attack. All right, well, and we're untapping.
I will get confirmation after the match, but it seems like it says they've let that go. So here we are.
Okay, so we got Shredder into Crackling Drake. Another pretty good sequence here for Scott. Discarding a Consider. Interesting. I guess Scott just wants to get the sizing on the Shredder. I actually don't hate that. Wants to get one shredder that's big enough to kind of rumble with the Faceless Haven. So good. I definitely like that.
All right.
We got
There it
2
is.
mana Supreme Phantom.
Yeah, and that pumps
Okay.
this Haven, right?
Does pump the Haven. Thing is, probably just going to trade it for the Drake. Honestly, I guess Scott is a little low on resources, but he has the haul too. I think personally, I'd probably just trade it with the Drake. You already get your card out of it. I guess he's wondering if it's okay. This is also a good double block too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think
like this. Yeah, you get to preserve your big threat. You only trade for one of the shredders. I mean, gonna end up trading for the big shredder, but that's fine. You get to keep a shredder. Still a 1-for-1 trade. Get to keep your biggest threat.
yeah, I think Scott's
And
totally fine with that. Then just draws the treasure cruise, no big deal. That's totally fine.
yeah, okay, all
I'm just gonna
right.
count my graveyard. No real reason. Just looking. We're just looking, guys. Okay.
We're counting it for the Drake. We're not counting it for the cruise.
I'm just looking. Okay. It's nothing to see here. Nothing at all. Oh, it's
I'm
great.
curious to see if whether or not this Drake is just a one turn, just a one shot. It's got to be close, right?
It's super close. And there's a fry. Oh yeah, we're frying it.
You get a connive with the shredder.
1 million damage. All right. So
I think it's a one shot.
yeah. So Scott Pulera, pretty impressive stuff. It looks like that is a miserable matchup for Mono Blue Spirits. So uh, and I mean, yeah, just tons of removal. The ledger shredders are, just stone walls the whole game. So really great play there. I think both players, Carly did the best they could. Almost got Scott down with the creature lands, and you're just gonna run into a bad matchup at some point throughout the day. You gotta hope it's not in the top 8. It's just kind of the nature of the beast, though.
Right, we talked about how bad the matchup was for Carly, but even that game where everything, it looked like every single thing was going right for Scott. At the end of the game, like, it didn't look the worst for Carly. There was a spot where she had a couple of Faceless Havens, got Scott down to 7. So, as bad of a matchup it is, she still definitely put up a good fight. So,
Yeah. All right. I don't think we have a backup match. I'm not sure unless so it's done. So great. So we will have a finals here in just a minute. Okay. So you can't draw it up any better, Devin. Mono Green Devotion versus Izzet Phoenix. The decks you and I both chose to win today. We're going to get to watch that matchup square off in the finals. So I am super excited about that.
yeah, that's going to be awesome. These are definitely if I had to put, a tier or a metagame in place, these are probably first and second on that tier list. I think these are probably the two best decks in the format, and it's really, really nice to see. And also the really good thing that I want to point out: Phoenix in the finals, even after the Expressive Iteration ban. Deck's not dead.
That's right. It's not. So, all right. Well, that's cool. We're going to get the players. They're going to take a quick break. Looks like they're grabbing some water and taking a quick restroom break. I encourage everyone else to do the same. That way you can sit with us through the finals match here. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be back with the finals here, and we're going to crown a champion here in Lansing.